Hi, everybody, and welcome to Math 1350, Introduction to Statistics. My name is Lane McConnell, and I'm going to be your instructor for the course this semester. The point of this video is to familiarize you guys with sort of the layout of the class and what the procedures and protocols are going to be this semester. I want to start by going over our homepage, which is what we're looking at in the background of this video right now. So this right here is our homepage. To access this, if you're new to CNM and unfamiliar with Brightspace, what you'll do is open any browser and type in mycourses.cnm.edu, which I have highlighted here. Hit enter. It'll take you to our Brightspace, your Brightspace homepage. From there, you'll just click on the Introduction to Statistics class, and that'll bring you to directly what we're seeing right here. From this point, I just kind of want to go over the layout of this. The most important things that you're going to need from this homepage are my instructor information, which we've got right over here. I'm not sure why my picture's not showing up at the moment, but it's not. But hopefully there'll be a picture of there so you can recognize what I look like. But it has my email address, which is the best way to get in touch with me throughout the semester if you have any questions or concerns. And it also has my office hours, which you can see are going to take the form of both online office hours and in-person office hours if you happen to be somebody who's on campus at all. So my online office hours are going to be on Mondays from 9 to 10:30 in the morning, and then I'll also have brief ones on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 3 to 3:30. And the link to get into the Zoom meeting for those office hours is right there on the homepage. My in-person office hours are going to be on main campus in Max Salazar, room 501. That's the top floor of the Max Salazar building, if you're familiar. And I'm going to be holding those from 10 a.m. to 11:15 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me. But I want to go over a few other things while we're looking at this homepage. What it tells us right here is to start by kind of looking at the overview and syllabus. That's going to be the most important thing to do on day one. As you're listening to this video, you've either already clicked through all of this or you're accessing it via the announcement that I sent out. But you can access the Getting Started module right here. Later on, we'll take a look at the learning modules, ALEKS, down the line. Exams will be relevant to you when we get to that point of the semester. And another way to access all of these, aside from clicking where we're looking right down here, is to come up to the top, and along this menu along the top, you can click on Coursework and click onto Content. That will take you to our Getting Started page. So I'm going to go through this Getting Started page in just a moment, but I want to start by looking at our syllabus, our overview and syllabus. So I'm going to click here. This Getting Started page, though, this is what you need to do on day one. And part of that is going through the syllabus. So let's take a look at that now. If I click on the overview and syllabus, we see a lot of words. I'm going to skip through most of this. This is sort of the details of all the stuff you're going to learn this semester. But right now, it's a lot of jargon and specialized language that's specific to statistics. And unless you've taken a statistics class, most of these are going to sound like a foreign language to you. So hopefully by the end of the semester, you can come back and look at this and all of these words will make sense. But for now, I'm going to gloss over them and get to the actual syllabus, which you can do by scrolling down here. So I'm going to just go through this with you. And instead of doing it in the little screen viewer here, because it makes it kind of tiny, I'm going to bring this up as a PDF. You can download it as well by clicking the download button down here. So here we've got the same syllabus we were just looking at. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. Perfect. It has a nice table of contents to help you navigate because it is a bit long. But let's go through it now. I'm going to jump to the course description as the first thing that I want to talk about. I mentioned that there's a lot of jargon, a lot of complicated language that sounds basically completely foreign. But as a big picture, what is statistics? Let me give you the little sort of mini rundown, or at least kind of my perspective that I think will help guide us through this entire semester. The way that I like to think of statistics is sort of in two parts. The first part is what we call descriptive statistics, and it is backward looking, meaning it's looking at data and events that have already occurred. And the second part is called inferential statistics and probability, and that's forward-looking, where we're trying to make predictions about what we think might happen or infer how do we think things work. We're going to kind of start off the semester with descriptive statistics, which is going to involve, for example, talking about how we can collect data, so how to sample appropriately to collect data, what types of data we can collect, how to summarize that data once we've got that. So oftentimes you'll have a big long list of numbers, for example. How do we condense that into something meaningful, something that we can easily glean information from? And so that's the idea of descriptive statistics. We have this data. How do we describe it? Hence the word descriptive. From there, what we're going to do is look at the events that have already occurred to try to come up with a model for how we think things work, and then use that model to try to predict what we think might happen in the future. And that is where the idea of inferential statistics, what information can we infer from the data that we've collected, where that comes into play. So once we've decided what information we can infer from existing data, we'll build a model and then try to predict what we think is going to happen in the future. And so basically the descriptive statistics will probably take course for the most part over the first 3-4 weeks of the semester, and then after that we'll move on to inferential statistics and probability. And so that's kind of the idea, though. We're going to start off with backward looking and then move to forward looking, and we're going to spend a good amount of time right in the middle talking about how do we go from one to the other. So big picture, that's kind of a good way to think about this. As far as the course information goes, I'm teaching 3 sections of this semester. It's not a requirement, but it's really helpful if you email me with questions that you mention which of these sections you personally are in, because it'll help me kind of locate when I want to look at your specific work or a problem that you specifically are stuck on. It'll help me narrow down which page I need to go to. So again, not a requirement, but if you can remember to do that when you email me, it'll be really helpful for me. My instructor information is all here. It's basically the same information that was already on that homepage that we looked at a minute ago. One additional piece of information that it has is my phone number, but I'm not at this desk very often, so your best way to get in touch with me is still going to be email. One other thing that it has is my office location, but again, you can't even access back where the cubicles are. The best you can do is get to sort of the main lobby area of this MS 501, which again is just sort of the top floor of the Max Salazar building. If you're familiar with it, just ride the elevators to the top and it'll pop you out in a lobby and you can talk to somebody there. Typically there's some sort of administrator out at a desk, and they can either get in touch with me or there's a phone out there and you can call this and see if I can come up from the back and meet you out there. The next thing that's going to be really important for you guys is textbooks, materials, and the resources that we're going to be using this semester. So the first thing I want to mention is the textbook. You've already paid for it, and it's included as part of your basically tuition and fees that you paid to sign up for this class. We're going to be using a platform called ALEKS, A-L-E-K-S. It's by McGraw-Hill. And again, you've already paid for it. The ebook is available within that, and at some point there's another video that kind of goes through ALEKS in general, and it'll show you how you can access the ebook from there. But again, you've already paid for it, so you don't need to pay for anything again. If you're old school and you really want a hard copy of something, this is the actual textbook we're using. You can try to find one online and look for a paper copy. And the bookstore also sells sort of a loose leaf version where they print it out and 3-hole punch it, and you can put it in a 3-hole binder if you want. And I think that's, you know, cheap-ish, on the order of 20 or 30 bucks. So not necessarily, not necessary, but if you really want it, that's totally an option for you. My hope is that if you keep up to date with watching the lecture videos that I provide, for the most part, you'll be able to do almost everything we need to do without really having to look into the textbook that much. So that's my hope. Hopefully you don't have to use the book all too often, unless, again, you're one of those people that really learns best by reading, and then it's totally a viable option. The calculator policy for this class is really important because we need to utilize technology in this class. We're going to be doing lots of complicated calculations, and we do not want to be doing them by hand. I do not want you to be doing them by hand. The goal is at the end of this course that you become competent in utilizing some piece of technology to solve these types of problems. The easiest piece of technology that you can use for most students is a graphing calculator. So I have it listed that a TI-84 graphing calculator is required for this course. There are some caveats to that, but it's listed as required. That way you can get financial aid for it if you are having this paid for via like a GI Bill, or if you're one of the dual credit students, I think you can make them pay for your calculator for you if you don't already have one. So you have a couple of options here. Option number one is you go out and you buy a graphing calculator. They're really expensive. The model that I'm preferring, it's the model that I'm going to be demonstrating how to do the work on, is called a TI-84, TI being Texas Instruments. They're not the only company that makes graphing calculators. There are Casio and HP calculators out there, and if you already own one of those, stick with it. You might have to do a little bit of Googling to figure out exactly what set of buttons you press to get the answer. That'll be a little different than the buttons that I'm pressing to get the answer. But for the most part, any of those graphing calculators will work. So that's option one. Option number two, try to borrow one from somebody that you know. If you have a cousin or a friend or somebody that has a calculator and they're willing to lend it to you for the semester, utilize that option. Save yourself the money, because probably for many of you at the end of this class thereafter, it's not going to be a tool that you wind up using again a lot in the future. So save yourself that money. The last option, and the one that probably will work best for most students, if you don't fall into one of the two previous categories, is skipping buying a calculator and instead just downloading an app onto your phone. So there are two apps, one for Android, one for iPhone. I have them listed here, so you can click on those links to download them. They aren't free, but they're cheap. I think the Android one is maybe $3. The iPhone one is maybe $6. I don't know if their pricing has changed, but when I looked them up about a year ago and came up with this list, that's about how much they cost. We're going to be utilizing them a lot on both the homeworks and the exams, and this is where things get a little bit tricky. These apps will work great for the homework problems, but when it comes time for the exams, we'll go into details about how exams are going to be laid out in a minute. But one important point to note is that I cannot let you use your cell phones during exams for hopefully obvious reasons. So that means you won't be able to access these apps during exams. As a workaround to that, one of your options is to come into one of the many C&M campuses and check out a graphing calculator. If you go to the library at, I believe they have them at Main Campus, Montoya Campus up in the Heights, and at Westside Campus, and maybe at Rio Rancho Campus, I'm not sure. But if you go to one of those libraries and go to the front desk, you can exchange your C&M ID for a graphing calculator, and they'll let you check it out for a few hours, and you can use that when you take the exam. So just go to one of the campuses to take your exam, take your ID card with you, check out that calculator just for the exam. The nice thing is when you use the app, the button layouts are exactly the same, all the commands are the same, so you should already be familiar with how to use the calculator, even when you're holding in your hand for the first time. So just keep that in mind. All of those are sort of ways that you can hopefully save money, but again, if somebody else is paying for it, go with the first option and just buy one. Other required sort of materials, and this is an online class, so you're going to need a computer, either a Windows machine with Windows 10 or newer, or a Mac with Mac OS version 10.12 or newer. Chromebooks kind of work for this, but there are a few drawbacks when it comes time to taking the exams, and a few students in the past have had issues using the proctoring software that we use as it relates to a Chromebook. So you might run into a few little hiccups there. You're welcome to try it on a Chromebook, but it should be pretty seamless if you have either a Windows machine or a Mac. You'll need a webcam. The one that's built into your laptop is totally fine. If you're using a desktop, you will need a webcam for when we take exams. So you don't need to buy it right away. And really anyone will do as long as it has both a microphone and the video. I don't think we'll need that until probably the second or third week. We're going to do a practice exam just to kind of run through the procedure and hopefully work out all the kinks. So try to have a webcam by then if you don't already have one. Scrolling down a bit, here's sort of a rundown of all the software and websites we're using. Brightspace, again, if you already have been a CNM student, you're familiar with Brightspace. It is the website that is hosting that homepage that we started on. Alex, this is going to be our homework platform where, again, you can also access the ebook. It's strongly recommended that you use either Firefox or Chrome as your browser when you access Brightspace, when you access the exams, any of the work that you're doing. Alex, use one of those two browsers. If you're using Edge or Safari or one of those other ones, again, they're kind of hit or miss. Sometimes you run into issues with that. And the last one, and probably the most controversial one, is we're going to be using Respondus Lockdown Browser. So this is going to be used on exams. This is how we basically try to maintain academic integrity, ensure that nobody's cheating. It's going to be a piece of software that locks you out of any other websites while you're on it. And we're going to be using a version of it that will also basically on your webcam record you taking the exam to, again, make sure that it's actually you taking it and that you aren't cheating and pulling out your phone and looking up answers. So it's kind of an invasive piece of software. None of the faculty at CNM particularly like using it, but I'll talk about that in just a minute when we get down to the exams. We kind of have to use it, so we'll get there in a minute. These student learning outcomes, these are the same pieces of jargon that we kind of saw previously. I'm going to gloss over them all. You should understand what all of these mean by the end of the semester, but you might not know what a single word here means at the beginning of the semester. We've got some important deadlines. When you can drop the course, you've got about 2 weeks until September 9th, and you can withdraw from the course, get your refund, and it's like you never took the course. If you go into the course beyond that and need to drop it later, the drop deadline is November 1st. And at that point, we will have had one exam. I think we'll be coming up on the second exam. You should have a pretty good idea of where you stand in the class at that point. Attendance policy, this is an online class, so obviously you aren't physically showing up in person. But what I'm looking for is just engagement. Are you still clicking in and logging in and doing your homework? I don't like to drop students, and generally speaking, I don't drop students for a lack of attendance. So that's kind of on you. If you stop showing up, you'll just get an F at the end of the semester, in all likelihood. But I do often drop students if you don't even take exams. So if I see that you don't take exams and you don't reach out to me and let me know that there's something going on and try to make plans to make the exam up or something, you might get dropped in that type of situation. But again, no guarantees there. If you need to drop the course, make sure that you are the one that does it. Academic integrity. Please don't cheat. That's kind of the gist of it. I don't catch a lot of people cheating. I know it's very tempting, especially in an online course. But when we do catch students cheating, and it happens, you know, once or twice a semester, it's kind of a bummer for everybody. Just avoid cheating in general, and because otherwise it makes a lot more paperwork and trouble for me, and it winds up having oftentimes pretty severe consequences for you. So just avoid that in general. How is this course going to look in terms of workload? So big picture, the way this class is set up is I've created lecture videos. Those lecture videos are basically cover each section of the textbook that we're kind of covering. My lecture videos typically range from, at the low end, maybe 30 or 40 minutes up to a full hour and 15 minutes, like a normal class. They're all hosted in YouTube, so you can use the little controls down in the right corner of YouTube to watch the video at 1.5 speed or something like that if you want to get through them more quickly. But I would strongly encourage you to treat those videos as though they were real lectures. Have a notebook, take notes. It'll make it a lot easier when it comes time to study before exams. But that's going to be how I impart the information. If you are, again, the type of person that would rather just read the textbook, that's totally an option. I think you'll get more out of the videos, hopefully, than just reading the textbook. So my intention is hopefully that most students utilize the lecture videos as their primary source of information. From there, how do you demonstrate that you understand what's going on? The first thing that you're going to have to do is homework. So again, there's a whole video later in the Getting Started module on how to use ALEKS. I'll leave most of the information there, but you'll have an assignment for basically every section of the textbook that we cover. There are a couple of sections throughout the semester that are going to be extra credit. I'm not going to cover them. They're not going to be on exams. They're not required material, but you can earn a few extra points there. Homeworks are going to be due on Tuesdays at 11:59 p.m. So for example, now in week 1, the material we cover this week, the homework for this week is going to be due next week at the sort of the beginning of week 2 on the Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. As far as homework is concerned, hopefully each assignment only takes you in the ballpark of, an hour to maybe 2 hours max. So hopefully you're not spending more than about 4 to 5 hours a week on homework. If you're spending more than that, it probably means that something's going wrong. You're not utilizing technology and you're trying to do the problems by hand, for example. That's a common thing I see. That's not the intention. I don't want you doing long, tedious, complicated calculations by hand. I want you to utilize the technology. So make sure you're doing that. If you have any questions, reach out and I can help with that. To get full credit on the homework, you only need to average an 80%. I know stuff comes up where maybe there's a week where, somebody's in the hospital or your work is making you do overtime or something and you just can't get to all the homework you need to. You can take a 0 here and there on 1 or 2 assignments as long as you get 100s on a few other assignments and your overall average works out to an 80. At the end of the semester, I'll look at your grades in ALEKS. If your grade is an 80 or above, I'm going to round it all the way up to 100%. So just keep that in mind. You have a little bit of leeway there. If your grade's below 80%, then unfortunately you don't get rounded up. You don't get that benefit. There's going to be one project toward the end of the semester. We're going to be using actual data from the city of Albuquerque, and you're going to be answering a few questions and trying to sort of synthesize that data and do some statistical calculations with it. But you don't need to worry about that till like week 11 or 12. It's towards the end of the semester. We will have exams and a final exam, so we'll have 2 what I guess you could call midterms. 2 exams. I just call them exam 1 and exam 2. The first one is, I think, in week 6, and the second one is in week 11, I believe. So for those are going to be worth, we'll talk about the grading in just a minute, I think 15% each, and then the final exam is going to be totally cumulative and worth a little bit more. But those 2 intermediate exams, in a sense, the material builds on itself, so the second one will have some ideas that we covered before exam 1, but they'll focus just on the preceding chapters. That will be the idea there. Again, you're going to be taking those exams remotely in the comfort of your living room or bedroom or wherever is convenient for you, somewhere with a good internet connection, at least for the majority of you. And we're going to be using that Respondus monitor and lockdown browser. I've designed the exams to be as close to like a pencil and paper type exam as they can be. So the procedure's complicated. We're going to, again, practice that in week 2, but the gist of it is you will log in on this lockdown browser, sort of record your environment around you with your webcam, and then you'll hit a button to start the exam. And from there will be a PDF that you can open, and that PDF will look like the type of exam I would hand physically to my in-person students. And my expectation is that you have some paper set out on the side, or if you have a printer nearby, you can print that PDF out real quick and fill out your answers directly on it. But you're going to write out your answers on a piece of paper while you sit in front of the camera to make sure that there's no funny business. And then afterwards, so I can grade it, you're going to basically scan or take pictures of your work and upload them sort of in a separate assignment. So it's going to be broken into 2 parts. Hopefully it'll make more sense once we get to that in week 2. But again, it's a complicated procedure, and so if you have any questions about it, please reach out and let me know, and we'll try to work our way through that. Some students either don't have great internet connection or, in many cases, don't really like the idea of downloading a sort of an invasive, privacy, intrusive piece of software like this lockdown browser, if you are in that boat, you also have the option of coming to any of CNM's campuses to take the exam there, or at least, like, maybe not South Valley. So main campus, Montoya, Rio Rancho, and Westside. I think we have proctoring centers at all 4 of those locations. So if you prefer, you'll just let me know, and you'll have to schedule an exam with them, but you can come take the exam in person, and that way you don't have to download the lockdown browser and be recorded on the webcam the whole time. You can come take the exams in person. So there's some sort of reassurances here. You can go through the Respondus lockdown browser. There'll be another link right here that you can go watch a video about it to see if you're comfortable using it. Most people are just, you're so used to being spied on by, you know, whatever governments or whatever is listening to you on your cell phone at all times, that is not an issue. But if you have concerns, that is an option. So here's the information. I should have scrolled down to here. Here's the information on how to go about trying to have your exam proctored on campus instead of taking it at home. As far as grading is concerned, here is the breakdown of where grades are going to come from. Homework is huge, 30% of your grade, and they're easy points. I already said that you only have to get an 80% average on the homework to get full credit. Furthermore, when you're doing the homework, you have unlimited opportunities on every problem. So you basically can submit an answer. If you get it wrong, you can try that problem again. Occasionally there's a problem that's like a true or false, and so it'll mark you wrong the first time you submit an answer. But if you log back out and log back in, it'll let you retry that problem without any penalty. So there should be no barrier to getting 100%. In fact, with the extra credit that I often have students that'll get 108% average on the homework. And if that's the case, I will give you 108% of the 30%, and you can get, you know, over 100% in the class by doing that. That project that I mentioned at the end of the semester is going to be worth 10%. Participation, which includes things like a little syllabus quiz, which is going to follow this, that you'll have to take. There's going to be some discussion posts, some classroom introductions, not a ton of discussion posts because I don't really like them and they always feel forced in an online class. But things like that, those will contribute to your participation grade. There's our exams, 2 at 15% each for a total of 30%, and then that final exam at the end of the semester is going to be worth 25%. For those exams, I think I looked at it, but I don't think I mentioned it. I talked about the procedure and using Respondus, but you will be allowed to use a graphing calculator. There is a built-in spreadsheet in the Respondus Monitor software that you can use. That's kind of like Excel. It works okay. And we'll talk more about those details when we get there, but you'll also be allowed a page of notes, an 8.5 by 11-inch page of notes. Single-sided for the original exams, double-sided for the final. So just keep that in mind. I'll let you have a bunch of resources going into it, and hopefully that can reduce some testing anxiety a little bit. Letter grades, standard grading scale, nothing new here. So just kind of keep all of these ideas in mind. Here's other policies and announcements that CNM likes us to include. A lot of these are only pertain to if you're going to be on campus, for example, the smoking policy, or the fact that you're allowed to get free printing. You get 150 free pages per semester if you print on CNM's campuses. And if you are a student that has already registered with Accessibility Services, the Accessibility Resource Center, and you have any sort of accommodations, just let me know, and I'll make sure that we get everything squared away before we get it to any of these, big grades or anything like that that's might affect how you proceed in the class. So just let me know. Lastly, I have sort of a tentative quick schedule here showing what sections we're going to cover which weeks and where our exams are. There is a more detailed calendar as you go through this Getting Started module that you can download and print out as well. That really goes through, here's the due date for this, here's when this becomes available, here's, it's a lot more detailed than this one here. So that's the gist of the syllabus. Let me go back now to our course page here. So we just went through this overview and syllabus page. Hopefully, unless you're watching this video again from that announcement that I sent out, you're probably somewhere already in this Getting Started module. If not, this is where you want to go to get started. I've got a day one checklist. Later on, we'll have weekly checklists, and checklists are really good for kind of keeping track of everything you need to do in any given week. So here's point by point all the different things you do. As soon as you know that you've finished it, you can check things off yourself by clicking into one of these boxes and so on, and saying, okay, I've completed that part, and it'll let you know how much you have left to do. I also try to make it really nice and included links. So for example, here's a link to that overview and syllabus. Here's a link to the more detailed course calendar. Down here, here's the link to that ALEKS video that'll guide you through how to use ALEKS specifically. And here's a link to that syllabus quiz. You can access them through here in that checklist, but you can also go back, and as you just go through the modules here, you can access them all in the same location down here. Accessing ALEKS is going to be one of the main things that we do, and there are lots of ways to get there. So let me go to one of our learning modules, for example. Here is the week 1 learning module. So this is where we actually get to the content from the course, where you actually start learning statistics. Again, it'll give you sort of a quick rundown of what's coming up that week. It'll give you a checklist. It's not available yet. I don't have it open yet, so I can't click into it, but it looks similar to that checklist that we just went through. And it'll have links for how you can get to each individual assignment that you need to get to. So using that checklist can be a good way to do it. Our lecture videos, again, you'll be able to click into these. I set it up and the release conditions are such that they haven't opened up yet, so that's why I can't click into it yet, but you'll be able to click here and watch my lecture video. And once you watch the lecture video, or in general watch all the lecture videos for a given week, at that point you would want to go into ALEKS and do the homework. To access ALEKS, you can use that checklist as I just mentioned, but another good way to get there is, let me just close my learning modules, break them down. I guess I can't collapse that. But it's over here on the left side in our, they call this sort of the table of contents here, is all these little links on the left-hand side. You can make them compact here. You can see a whole bunch of stuff. We have our Getting Started module. Again, that's really only relevant on day 1. Our learning modules, that's where all the lecture videos are and all those checklists. But here's a link directly to ALEKS. You can click on that, click here, and it'll open up ALEKS in your browser. And again, I don't want to go into this in too much detail, but it's just going to ask you for some basic information. When you first get started, it shouldn't ask you to pay for anything. I'm going to let that load and come back here. And let me just go back to my table of contents and just point out a few other things in here. Exams, you'll be able to access those from the learning modules, but if you need to get in there, you can also click directly on here, and we'll have practice exams in there leading up to the exams. The actual exams will be there, and then, and then after the exams, this is where I will post solutions to the exams so you can check your work against the correct solutions. The project, again, that's not going to be available until November, so you've got a while there. And then there are also some extra course resources. Let me just click into here. There's a calculator guide for how to use that TI-84 graphing calculator. It's a PDF that you can print out and kind of go through. There are some tables. We're going to use these towards the end of the semester, so we don't need these yet. Not until we get to chapter 7 or so is when we'll start utilizing these in here. And then there's a bunch of PowerPoints that are sort of a condensed version of the textbook if you'd like to use those. They're totally optional. I don't utilize them at all, but you're welcome to go through them and browse them on your own. But otherwise, I think I've covered everything. I know I've talked a lot. If you have any questions about how things are going to go this semester, send me an email. If you have any concerns or thoughts or constructive criticisms or compliments, I'll take any of it. Just let me know. Send me an email and keep in touch. And hopefully you have a nice, smooth semester. Good luck. We'll be in touch.